If you've got an autistic child, or if you work with autistic children, you'll want to learn today how to support and teach children who are on the autistic spectrum. I'm here today with Kristen Wilson. Welcome to Live on Purpose TV.
Thank you.
Kristen is a speech language pathologist, which is how I kind of got to know you, because you and my wife went to school together.
Exactly.
And so we've known each other for a while as well.
Yep.
But she has also developed some expertise and experience on our topic today, which is autism and the autistic spectrum, how we're working with kids who are on the spectrum. Kristen, we've started to talk about this differently in the last several years than we did in the past.
Right.
And I'm grateful for that. Maybe you'll have some comments about that. But Kristen is also an administrator and is helping to head up an educational program for autistic children. I think it's called Spectrum Academy.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And that's a local, it's right here.
Yep.
Locally. But you may have something in your locality that's similar. She's the one. And that's why I brought her on here today. Kristen, can you get us started here with how do we work with kids who are on the spectrum? Because there's some differences and some things we need to be aware of.
Yeah, absolutely. The number one thing that I recommend to anybody who's working with a child with autism is to establish yourself as a big reinforcer for that child. So really building on the relationship that you have. Because if that child begins to trust you and see you as someone really fun and exciting, they're a lot more likely to work for you when it comes time to do teaching.
This can be a challenge because one of the things that is a diagnostic indicator of autism or a spectrum condition is the social disconnect.
Right.
In fact, sometimes you might have a child you're working with, for example, who doesn't do any eye contact, or who there's different levels, right?
Yes.
But establishing yourself as a reinforcer, sometimes you're not going to get all the cues back from them that you've accomplished that.
Absolutely.
The relationship is still really important.
Yes. I like to think of it as turning yourself into the giant chocolate chip cookie in the room.
Okay.
So that when the kid sees you, they think, oh my gosh, my life just got so much better because the cookie's here. Mm-hmm. And that takes a lot of work. And you're right. A lot of times it's not necessarily a teaching situation. It's play.
Right.
And it's talking to them even if they can't talk back to you. And it's having fun together. Doing things that they are interested in, not that you think they should do.
Something I've noticed about that, Kristen, is that I love the chocolate chip cookie idea, because you need to be seen as a provider of good times and good things.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's not our agenda. It's not like, oh, this is someone who can help me. No, they're not thinking that way.
Right.
Provider of good times and good things.
Yes.
You become the chocolate chip cookie.
That's right.
Love it.
I love it too.
Okay, so Kristen, once we've set up this chocolate chip cookie relationship with these kids, there's things that we can do, right? Environmentally, I'm thinking about the context of where we are. Help us with that.
Yeah, absolutely. In behavior analysis world, we call this antecedent manipulations. And all that means is we are manipulating or changing the environment before behaviors happen. That's the antecedent part.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we don't end up having to deal with the behavior because we've set it up beforehand.
Right.
Beautiful.
So all of this is done without the child necessarily even being involved in it. You're setting up the situation or the environment first.
Can you give us an example of what that might look like?
Yeah, you bet. So one of the most important things for kids on the spectrum is to take a look at their sensory needs.
Oh, yeah.
So we've got lots of kids who they can't handle loud noises, can't handle bright lights, crowded places, things like that. So before any kind of teaching experience, you would want to understand their sensory needs and have those things provided for. So maybe the room is a little darker. At our school, a lot of teachers have fabric coverings for the fluorescent lighting so that it just dims the lighting in the classroom a little bit.
Softens it up.
Right. Our kids have access to headphones, either noise canceling or maybe to listen to preferred music for them to block out some sound.
I have a client, a little guy who's really, really sensitive to sounds, and especially the sounds that come from people's mouths.
Oh, yep.
Right?
That's a real thing.
The little clicks, the little, it's normal.
Yep.
But he is super attuned to it. And his parents got him these noise-canceling headphones where he doesn't have to listen to all of the little clicks and slurps and little sounds that come out of a person's mouth.
Exactly. Absolutely. And in a teaching situation, maybe you're setting your table and chairs in a certain way so that the child is next to the wall and the teacher's on the other side to just kind of block them from leaving that area, but in a kind of a gentle, kind way. So you're setting up the environment, first of all, to get ready for any kind of teaching.
This is called Live on Purpose TV. And so you're purposefully planning. It's an intentional anticipation of what might come up, and then arranging your environment and your setting in a way that optimizes the outcomes.
Yep, absolutely.
Wow, beautiful.
Another really important thing is having visuals for these kids. They're much more inclined to be visual learners than auditory learners. And so as many pictures as we can give them in their environment, the better. At our school, every classroom has a schedule in the classroom, whether that's pictures or words written out or posted, so that the children know what we're doing now and what's coming next.
Gives them a little map so that they know what to expect.
Right.
My experience in working with kids on the spectrum also is that they get very accustomed to routines. Any deviation from that routine kind of tips them over a little bit.
Yep.
So what you're saying is just create this visual map for them so that they know what to expect, what to anticipate. If there's a change, you at least need to give them some cues that that's coming.
Absolutely. That visual schedule really helps them to know what's coming next.
There's some interesting dynamics. I think this is true of any kids that we work with, but maybe you've got some insights about how this shows up on the spectrum, but in terms of control and having some choice and some ability to direct what's going on. You're nodding. What are you connecting with on those lines, Kristen?
Giving children with autism a choice in whatever is coming next reduces a lot of those meltdowns that we see. So choice can actually be built in to anything that you're doing. It doesn't have to be, do you want to do math or do you want to do this worksheet? It can be, do you want a red pencil or a green pencil? For parents, it can be, do you want to ride on the left side of the back seat or the right side of the back seat? But you're working in some kind of choice into every situation to give them that little bit of control.
Keeping in mind, the examples that you used were beautiful, because keep in mind that you need to be okay with either choice.
That's right.
If you're giving them, well, you can do this or you can do that, and you're not okay with the one, guess where they're going?
Absolutely.
So make sure you're okay with either choice. That's why I love this. Red pencil or green pencil. Either way, we're doing math, right? But you don't have to say that part.
Right.
You simply emphasize the choice, and that gives them a little higher sense of control over a life that doesn't feel very controllable.
Right. 100%. And it works for children who are verbal or nonverbal. If they can point, then they can indicate a choice. If they can even look towards one toy or another toy, then they can make a choice.
Wonderful. Now, one of the places we get into trouble as parents or as educators, what are the best consequences to use? We all know that consequences are important, but I think that there's some special considerations when we're working on the spectrum.
Yeah, absolutely. I look at consequences as just what is happening directly after the behavior that you've seen.
Okay.
So there are some things we can do. We talked about manipulating those antecedents, the things that happened
come before.
right? Now we're going to look at manipulating what happens after a behavior. One of the things we can do there is provide redirection. We can just simply gesturally redirect a child.
Change their direction.
Exactly. We can move a hand down. We can ask them, oh, please put it here, and just gently provide some redirection if they're starting to go off track with their behavior a little bit.
An acknowledgement here, Kristen, because when we talk about consequences, it's really easy to interpret that as punishments or
Correct.
rewards. You're just saying a consequence, and this really goes back to the root of the word.
Yes.
The sequence part of consequence has to do with what follows what.
Right.
And the cone part, it has to do with. So it comes with a sequence. It comes in sequence with something.
Yep.
And we don't have to break the whole word down, but what I'm trying to get to is that it's not necessarily what we would traditionally think of as a punishment or a reinforcer or a reward. It's simply what comes with this behavior,
Right.
what immediately follows it, and it might be a redirection, which
Yes.
is not a punishment.
Nope.
So
Just
that takes some of the
helping
pressure
them-
off, hopefully.
Right. Helping them make a different choice.
Right.
A more appropriate choice.
And a teaching, a learning opportunity
Right.
for that child.
Right. Another thing that we do that I love and recommend all the time is called, here comes a fancy word, non-contingent reinforcement.
A non-contingent reinforcement. Okay?
And all
I
that
got an
is,
idea of what that is. Go for it.
okay, all it is providing some kind of positive reinforcement that is not contingent on whatever behavior was previously there. So
Okay.
it could be that every 15 minutes you check on a child and make sure you're giving them a pat on the back, a thumbs up, a way to go, buddy. You're doing awesome work.
I'm thinking of chocolate chip cookies. Because really this is how you do it, right? You
Right.
want to be seen as a provider of good times and good things.
Yeah.
So completely unrelated to their behavior, you're simply popping in with something positive, something
Right.
good, something that they want
Yes.
and enjoy, which helps to make you the chocolate chip cookie.
That's right. And a lot of times
Nice.
kids on the spectrum crave attention, but they don't know how to get it in appropriate ways.
Right.
This is a
Right.
strategy that really helps with that because you're already providing that attention. Maybe on a very scheduled time frame, like I said, every 5 minutes, every 15 minutes, or maybe more variable as to what you see that child needing. But you're providing them with a lot of that good stuff.
I'm seeing, Kristen, that these suggestions would work really well in a school environment,
Right.
like where you are. You're in an educational setting
Sure.
with autistic kids and spectrum. I can see that there's a lot of applications here for mom or dad at home too.
100%.
Or even a babysitter or a daycare provider. These are powerful strategies.
Yeah. And when we're looking at how to change behavior, which I know some of your viewers have asked about, how to
Right.
teach or support kids with autism, we have to kind of have our tool belt of these different strategies to use to work with these kids.
And be ready to be flexible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they may not be.
Oh, at our school we call it bendy brains. Always having a bendy brain. And that's the adults and the kids.
Right. And I think that helps with the perspective, because we're not here to make sure that things happen a certain way. Be really tolerant and accepting, not only of these kids, but of yourself too.
Absolutely.
Just give yourself an opportunity to learn these skills as you go. It's not easy, but there's a lot of resources available too.
Yes, a lot. It's a hard job, and we understand that. The last thing I wanted to mention is another consequence strategy to change a behavior. It's called extinction. And sounds a little weird
happened
and
to the
scary,
dinosaurs,
maybe,
Kristen?
right? I know.
But that's the idea, right?
Exactly. Wiped out. That's the idea. Wiped out. What it really is technically is not reinforcing something that has been reinforced in the past.
Yes.
If there's something maintaining a behavior, for me as a mom, it was letting that kid get into my bed in the middle of the night because I was too tired to do anything different.
Do anything about it. Yep.
And I didn't necessarily
We've all
want
been
them there, but there they were.
Yeah.
When you apply extinction, it looks like this. I had a teacher who had twins. Imagine this, twin 1-year-olds who got out of bed and got into mom and dad's bed all the time. So they decided to apply extinction and say, okay, tonight, starting tonight, no more. So then...
I can anticipate how this went.
Exactly. Something happens that's called an extinction burst.
Yep. In other words, it gets worse before it gets better. That usually means that you're doing the right thing.
Yes. Want to know about those twins?
Yeah.
Guess how many times they got out of bed that first night?
Oh, it's probably going to be a lot. Yeah.
Come
did
on,
you count?
give me a number.
50?
Try 175.
Oh, man.
Can you imagine?
I can.
Those poor parents, right? But the next night, it was reduced by about half. And the next night, about half of that. Took about a week.
Yeah.
And those babies were staying in bed all night.
You know what happens is this kid is thinking, man, this always used to work.
Right.
I must be losing my touch.
Yep.
I better turn up the volume.
Yeah. 100%.
That's the burst, right?
Yeah.
And what happens if you cave in after they turn up the volume?
Then it's going to take you even longer.
Because you just told them, oh yeah, that's it.
Yep.
If you don't get what you want, just turn up the volume.
Exactly.
Right? So you're saying you got to endure through that burst, get over the hump, and then it's going to come back down.
Exactly.
That's been my experience as well.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you, Kristen, for that input. It's great to have experts who can share their knowledge here. You get to share this as well. Select one of the share options down below and share this with someone that you think would really benefit.
I saw her standing in the street alone. Her head was down, face locked on.